Hey family, it's Danielle and today is Tuesday, so we are going to have a Tuesday chat and sit down and chat it up. So grab your drinks and let's chat.
The snob life, the homeschooling life,
the boss life,
the non-traditional life,
the family life,
telling it how it is, life outside the box.
And if you don't know what that means,
it's the non-traditional mommy.
Baby.
Today I want to chat with you guys about healing and forgiving your parents, if that is something that you need to do, moving past mistakes that parents made and things like that. So I want to chat about that with you guys today. But before we jump into this chat, if you're new here, hi, welcome. My name is Danielle and I am the non-traditional mommy. And on Tuesdays, we sit down and chat it up about all different types of topics. So if you like to sit and chat, then join my little family. For the rest of my non-traditional family, you guys are the MVPs and I love you bunches. Now, let's chat, you guys. So this topic came up in regards to my parenting video that I did about your kids not owing you anything. I'll leave that linked here for you guys that have not seen that. In that video, we just talked about, parents understanding that their kids didn't ask to be born, that their kids aren't obligated to respect them, kids don't owe them anything, and just things like that. And again, I'll leave that video linked here. And I think that video just sparked a lot in people, and parents especially, who may have made that mistake raising their kids growing up. As parents, there is no rule book, there is no guidelines, there isn't a training that we go through before becoming parents. And so a lot of times, a lot of mistakes are made along the way, especially with the first child and sometimes second, third, fourth children. And sometimes all your kids, and it's not till you get to grandkids that you realize, oh my gosh, I made so many mistakes raising my own kids. And so there can be that sense of guilt that a parent carries around. And then for the child, there could be that resentment towards the parent. That their parent made all of these mistakes, or that their parent raised them this way, and so forth and so on. And so I just want to talk about healing and forgiving your parents. The first step to healing and forgiving parents is figure out what all you're angry about. Exactly. What exactly are you needing to forgive your parents for? What traumas are you holding on to? What are the things that you are carrying around with you? What are maybe some things that are bleeding into your current relationship or the current way that you parent? Those kind of things. So what is the resentment about? What exactly are you angry about? And once you can do that and develop a language and communication and some words for what it is that you are holding on to, maybe write those things down, whatever you need to do, recognizing that they didn't know, that they may have not known any better, that they did the best with what knowledge they had, what access to whatever knowledge they had. They thought that they were doing the right thing. They just simply didn't know. And so as an adult child, being able to recognize that a person can only do so much with what they have is the first step of healing. So, understanding that if you grew up in a situation where there was a sense of lack, so to speak, or your parents were working hard to just simply keep a roof over your head or the lights on or whatever the case may be, and there may have been more discipline or more rules or things that you felt didn't necessarily have to be, understanding that they were doing the best that they could with what they were given And so if you're able to recognize that, then you can start to make steps towards healing, understanding that it wasn't a personal attack on you as a child, that it was literally them trying to do the best that they could do with what they had. As kids, you don't know everything that is going on in the background with your parent. And I think when you become an adult, if you're able to sit back and maybe remember a situation that was trauma for you, and you might think back and you're like, okay, now that I'm sitting here and I'm putting the puzzle pieces together, this is what was going on for my parents, my mom, my dad, or whatever. And now it all is starting to make sense. And so sometimes just having that awareness or having that ability to analyze and reflect can help you begin that process of healing with understanding that they were doing the best that they could with what they were given. Once you're able to say, okay, they were doing the best that they can, the next thing would be to sit with them. And if you have parents that are in a place of healing themselves, so a lot of times this is when they become grandparents. No, 11. A lot of times this is when they become grandparents or something significant has happened. They are in a place of healing themselves. Sometimes they'll share it with you, sometimes they won't. But being able to sit down with them and talk about the things that you're angry about, maybe gain some sense of understanding on where they were coming from or what was going on or what was happening. If you're not able to go back and reflect and have aha moments, then sitting down in conversation with them could provide you with that. You know, for me and my mom, when I was able to sit with her and to understand how she ended up on the path and the journey that she ended on, it provided me, and I believe her, with so much healing that we were then able to move forward in our relationship. Having that hard conversation opened up doors to a better relationship. So being able to understand and sit and communicate with them on trying to get some awareness of where it came from. You want to go out? Okay. Now, if it's a situation where you can't sit with your parents and they're not in a place to discuss with you the things that you are carrying or holding on to, the resentments, the anger, then answer those questions yourself. So if you're angry about something, let's just take something as simple as you didn't allow me to join extracurricular activities. And I'm angry because I felt like I was missing out on something. Maybe sit with yourself and try to answer that question. Why didn't you let me play extracurricular activities? And again, this is going back to reflecting and awareness and trying to maybe put yourself in their shoes or understand and maybe answering those questions. So you're kind of doing your own back and forth bantering and healing. This is not as effective as if you're able, of course, to sit with the source and talk to them, but this does start to open up the door for healing for yourself. And keep in mind, this healing is for you. It's not for your parents. It is strictly for you. One of the most important things for healing with your parents is boundaries as an adult. If you have not set clear boundaries as an adult, it is going to be very hard for you to do any of these other steps because the lines are still very blurred. And you may still feel like you are in the trenches like a child. You may still feel like you're dealing with the same type of trauma that you were dealing with as a child. So if you don't have very clear boundaries is going to make it hard for there to be any type of healing. Because what you don't want to do now, of course, if your parents are extremely toxic, toxic relationships, abusive relationships, then we need to cut those relationships off from our life. We don't need to expose ourselves to those relationships, and that's a whole different video. But if we're not talking about toxic relationships, then you don't necessarily want to say, okay, I can't deal with you, I'm just not going to talk to you. You want to be able to create a boundary and still have relationship and communication with your parents, because much like I said in the previous video of the child not asking to be born, you didn't necessarily get to choose your parents didn't necessarily get to choose who they parented. So understanding that is also important. These are your parents, this is what you were given. So accepting that is part of the healing as well. Like, I accept that this is the parents that I was given. And so having very clear boundaries and making it known to your parents that, hey, these are my boundaries. I'm an adult. These are the things that we're not going to do. You're not going to talk to me in that tone, or you're not going to speak to me that way. And if you do, I will just end the conversation, or I will just leave, or whatever the case may be. Whatever your boundaries are, having those very clear boundaries is going to be important, because once you have set boundaries, that opens up the door and the prospect to heal everything else, because you're not being re-injured over and over and over. It's hard to heal if you're study being re-injured in that same spot. Does that make sense, you guys? You know, if you have a cut and you continue to cut yourself, that cut's not going to heal. Another step to healing is to not play the blame game. And this one is so hard, because it's easy to blame our parents, to blame our childhood, to blame how we were raised on the outcome of a situation that we're in now, or the way we respond to things now, or how we act now, or whatever the case may be. And while this is true a lot of times, that our childhood and experiences can dictate how we are in the future, it's not 100%. It is not black and white. There's some gray there. And so once you're able to not play the blame game and say, oh, it's their fault that I did this, or it's their fault that I did that, and be able to step away from that. Again, going back to, they were doing the best that they knew how. We're doing the best with the wisdom and knowledge that they had, the tools that they had, whatever the case may be. You've gotten a lot of questions answered on why certain things were done, or why this was this way, or whatever. And you've set boundaries, and now you're an adult, because again, once you become an adult and you're aware, you can make changes. So if it was, I didn't like the fact that my parents didn't let me play extracurricular activities, while you can't go back to that time, as an adult, you can make changes and do things in your life to try to heal that experience, or heal that loss, or whatever. So you can no longer use that as to the rest of your future, if that makes sense, you guys. You can't use that for the rest of your future. So being able to stop blaming them for the things that they did and it becoming your outcome, but rather acceptance is more of an acceptance. I accept that that is a part of my history, but that doesn't have to define me for the rest of my life. That starts a place of healing. That begins the process of healing as well, because you're no longer pointing. Again, we can't heal if we're looking at somebody else for our problems. That would mean that that person needs to provide us with a solution in order for us to heal. It takes away our power and our ability to heal ourselves. The final phase or final step or final thing to healing and forgiving your parents is to forgive yourself. Forgive yourself for the negative thoughts you may have had, for the resentment that you've carried, for the anger that you've carried, for the decisions that you've made that strictly came from the trauma of your childhood. Forgive yourself for carrying on certain qualities and things and traits of your parents that maybe you didn't necessarily want to carry, and you recognize that you have been doing that. So forgiving yourself for working and operating with the things that you had to work and operate with at the time. So forgive yourself will help you to forgive them. So that's the final step. Forgive yourself and then move on to forgiving them. Once we forgive ourselves, we can start to forgive other people in our lives. I want to end this video with a quote that I like to use all the time. You can't make a cat bark. So you cannot make a cat do something that it is physically, mentally, and incapable of doing. Like a cat just cannot bark. It doesn't have the ability to bark. And so what I mean by that is you can't make a person do something that they just don't have the ability, the capability, the mental stability, the emotional, the physical to be able to do. Sometimes stepping back and looking at your parents and understanding that this is a cat, and this entire time I've been trying to make this cat bark. It's not going to happen. That tiny shift can provide you the opening that you need to start doing all these steps to begin healing. Just understanding that I cannot make this person do something that they just are not capable of doing. Sometimes we think they can do it, like they're capable, they just don't want to. And it's not that. They literally are not capable of doing it. They're just not. And it could be for a vast majority of reasons that they're not capable of doing it. And that's not for you to try to figure out why they're not capable of doing it, but maybe have an understanding of why they're not capable of doing it. It's more so for you to accept that I can't make a cat bark. And if you want something that's going to bark, you need to get a dog. So if this cat not barking is causing so much trauma, so much stress, and again, a toxic relationship, then you may need to just move that cat out of your life because it's never going to bark. But if it's like, okay, I wish that the cat would bark, that would be nice, but it's not barking, then you can move on from that and have a sense of acceptance, and the relationship can grow and hopefully thrive into something different. Maybe not what you were expecting, maybe not what you were thinking, but into a beautiful relationship with a cat versus with a dog. I hope that analogy comes together in full circle. So that's it, you guys. I want to leave you with that. If you have any other questions or thoughts on that, leave them in the comment section below. I would love to hear how you've dealt with healing and trauma growing up as a child, or mending relationships with your parents. I would love to hear about that in the comments below. I will leave some videos here and here for you guys. If you have not seen my video on parenting, I'll leave those here for you guys to check out. If you're still here, hit the subscribe button and join my little family. To the rest of my family, I love you guys, and I will see you next Tuesday. Bye.